Every wolf pack has an alpha. You've heard this your entire life. The dominant wolf, the one at the top, the one that eats first, leads the hunt, makes the decisions, the one everything else revolves around. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you probably have a picture of what happens when that wolf dies. Chaos, a power vacuum, younger wolves fighting for dominance until a new leader emerges and order is restored. It's a clean, intuitive story. It's also almost completely wrong. What actually happens when an alpha wolf dies has been studied in more detail than almost any other event in wild animal behavior. And what researchers found in the forests and plains of Yellowstone, in the mountains of Italy, in the boreal wilderness of Canada, didn't match the story we've been telling ourselves for decades. It was stranger, more complex, and in some ways far more human than anyone expected. Let's start with what the alpha actually is, because most people have the wrong picture entirely. The word alpha comes from studies done on captive wolves in the 1940s. Wolves that had been pulled from different packs and thrown together in an enclosure. Under those conditions, yes, there was constant fighting, constant jockeying for position, a brutal and visible hierarchy enforced through aggression. That research shaped how we talked about wolves for the next 50 years. The problem is that captive wolves thrown together from different families behave nothing like wolves in the wild. In the wild, a wolf pack is almost always a family, a breeding pair and their offspring, sometimes across multiple generations. The alpha male and alpha female aren't dominant because they fought their way to the top. They're dominant because they're the parents. The hierarchy isn't enforced through constant aggression. It's maintained the way a family is maintained, through familiarity, through role, through the quiet authority of the animals that everyone else was raised by and depends on. When you understand that, the question of what happens when the alpha dies becomes a completely different question. It's not what happens when the strongest fighter is removed. It's what happens when a parent disappears. The answer depends almost entirely on one thing: which alpha died. When the alpha male dies, the pack almost always survives. It reorganizes. It adapts. The surviving female, the alpha female, holds the structure together in ways that researchers consistently describe as remarkable. She continues to lead hunts. She continues to make territorial decisions. She continues to be the emotional and social anchor of the group. The loss of the male is significant. Packs that lose their alpha male show measurable increases in stress behaviors in the weeks following the death. Subordinate males become temporarily more unsettled. There's more low-level tension, but the pack doesn't fall apart. In documented cases across Yellowstone, packs that lost their alpha male within the first year of study were still functioning coherent units 2 and 3 years later. The female holds them together. This is not a small finding. It directly contradicts the popular image of the male wolf as the irreplaceable center of pack life. The data says something else entirely. The data says the female is the load-bearing wall. When the alpha female dies, the outcome is far less predictable and far more devastating. Researchers studying Yellowstone wolf packs over a 25-year period found that the death of the alpha female was the single strongest predictor of pack dissolution. Not the death of the male, not disease, not prey scarcity. The female. When she dies, packs splinter. Subordinate females, often daughters of the dead alpha, leave. Sometimes they take portions of the pack with them. Sometimes the remaining males disperse entirely. The social fabric that held the group together was more bound to her than to anyone else in the pack. And when she's gone, the threads come loose in ways that don't always reconnect. Wolf 06 was the alpha female of the Lamar Canyon pack in Yellowstone. Researchers and wolf watchers called her the most famous wolf in the world. She was exceptional, even by wolf standards. She could take down elk alone, something that usually requires coordinated pack effort. She led her pack through territory disputes, prey fluctuations, and the brutal winters of the Northern Rockies for years. Her pack was one of the most stable and well-documented in Yellowstone's history. In December 2012, she was shot legally just outside the park boundary. She was 6 years old. Within 18 months of her death, the Lamar Canyon pack had essentially ceased to exist as a coherent unit. The animals scattered. Some joined other packs, some were never seen again. A pack that had been one of the most successful in the park's wolf population collapsed not because of disease or starvation or rival wolves. because she was gone, but the story doesn't end there. And this is the part that surprises people most. Packs that survive the death of their alpha, whether male or female, go through something that researchers are increasingly willing to describe as grief. Not metaphorical grief. Documented behavioral changes that map closely onto what grief looks like in elephants, in primates, in humans. Wolves that lose a pack member, and especially a high-ranking one, show decreased food intake in the days following the death. They vocalize more, howling at unusual hours, in patterns that researchers describe as searching calls rather than territorial ones. They return to locations associated with the dead wolf. They move more slowly, they rest more. Their coordination on hunts drops measurably for weeks afterward. Wolf 21 was the alpha male of the Druid Peak Pack in Yellowstone, one of the most studied wolves in history. When his lifelong mate, Wolf 42, died, observers documented a change in him that lasted months. He moved differently. He engaged with the pack differently. He was still functional. He still led. But something had shifted in a way that showed up clearly in behavioral data. He never took another mate. In a species where alpha males almost always rebond quickly for reproductive reasons, he didn't. He led the pack alone until his own death 2 years later. Here's what this means for the pack beyond the grief period. A wolf pack without a breeding pair is a pack without a future. Wolves don't just need a leader to hunt. They need a stable, bonded pair to reproduce, to raise pups, to train the next generation of hunters. When an alpha dies and no replacement bond forms, the pack can function in the short term, but it's running on borrowed time. The critical question in the months after an alpha's death is always the same. Will a new pair bond form? In some packs it does. A subordinate male and female, sometimes siblings from different litters, sometimes a dispersing wolf from outside the pack will pair and step into the role. When this happens, the pack often restabilizes with surprising speed. The new pair takes on the behavioral markers of leadership almost immediately. They lead hunts. They scent mark territory boundaries. They enforce the social order. The transition isn't always smooth, but it happens. In other packs it doesn't. The animals disperse. They join other packs as subordinates, or they live as solitary wolves, which carries its own risks. A lone wolf has a dramatically lower survival rate than a pack wolf. No cooperative hunting, no shared territory defense, no support when injured. The pack isn't just a social preference for wolves. It's a survival mechanism. Leaving it is genuinely dangerous. There's one more piece to this that researchers in Yellowstone discovered that almost nobody talks about. Wolf packs that lose an alpha and successfully reorganize don't just return to baseline. In some documented cases, they emerge from the disruption stronger. The crisis forces subordinate wolves into roles they hadn't occupied before. A young male that had always deferred on hunts is suddenly in a position where deferral isn't an option. He leads. He learns. He makes decisions under pressure he would never have faced if the structure above him had remained intact. Researchers call this compression learning. The pack loses something irreplaceable at the top, and it forces capability to develop lower down the hierarchy faster than it would have otherwise. Some of the most dominant and successful wolves ever documented in Yellowstone came from packs that had survived significant disruption earlier in their history. The loss created the pressure that produced the capability. What wolves do when they lose their alpha is not what the old story said. There's no dramatic battle for dominance, no sudden descent into chaos. What there is something quieter and harder to watch. Grief, confusion. A period of searching calls into empty territory. And then slowly, a reorganization that either holds or doesn't, depending on factors that researchers are still working to fully understand. The pack is not built around the strongest animal. It's built around a relationship, a bond between two animals that holds everything else in place. When that bond breaks, everything shifts. Sometimes the pack finds a new center. Sometimes it doesn't. But either way, what happens in those weeks and months after the alpha dies reveals something that wolves and humans share more deeply than most people expect. That the structures we build our lives around are more fragile than they appear, and more resilient than we fear. And that sometimes the only way to find out which one is true is to lose something you thought was permanent, and see what's still standing when the grief clears.